All right, boys and girls, so today we're going to be going over Unit 2, Lesson 4, which is perpendicular and parallel lines. First thing I need you to do is put your name at the top, and then we are going to jump in and get started. So it says, using a compass and a straight edge, divide the following segment, AB, into 4 congruent segments. So I'm just going to highlight what the question's asking us to do. We have to divide segment AB into 4 congruent segments. Now, if you remember, the vocabulary word congruent means equal. So I'm really trying to divide this segment into 4 equal pieces. Now, I know we did that towards the last page of lesson 3. So you've done it once before. Now we're just going to refresh our memory and practice it again. So the first thing you want to do is take your pointer on the compass. It's like right in the middle of that clear area. And I'm going to put my pointer on point A. So let's go ahead and do that. Make sure it's lined up nicely in the middle and then put your finger down to hold it. I want to move the slider so I'm a little bit more than halfway. So I don't want to be all the way to point B, but I don't want to be in the middle either. I want to be about 3/4 of the way. So here we go. I'm going to move my slider over. So I'm about 3/4 of the way. I'm going to stick my pencil in the outside hole. Make sure you remember what hole you're using, people. And I'm going to swing all the way up and all the way down. All right, very important. And then I'm going to not change anything. I'm just going to turn it around. So now I'm going to put my pointer on point B. I want to make sure it's lined up nicely in the middle. Put my finger down. Same thing with the outside hole. It's got to be in the same hole. Swing all the way up and swing all the way down. And now that I have a nice cross, I can go ahead and use my ruler to connect these guys. Now, sometimes this happens. It's like just a little too short, and that's okay. Let me slide this up just a smidge so you guys can see that. You just do like the best that you can to get it, as straight as you can. I just move it down, and it turns out that it was nice and straight. Okay, so now I've divided the segment into 2 equal pieces. I have this chunk on the left and I have this chunk on the right. So that's not enough because the directions asked us to divide it into 4 equal pieces. So in order for us to finish off this question, a good next step would be labeling this point that's now in the middle, because I cut this in half. I'm just going to call it M. I'm picking the letter M because M is midpoint. And that's what this is. It's a point in the middle. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to cut line segment AB in half. I'm going to cut line segment AM in half. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put my pointer on point A. Make sure it's lined up nicely in the middle. And instead of going to B, I'm going to M here. Okay. Because I'm cutting this segment in half. Now, I don't want to go all the way to M. And I also don't want to be halfway. I want to be like 3/4 of the way. So I'm going to move my slider back, and I'm just going to move it over a smidge. Again, I'm using my outside hole, so I'm swinging all the way up and all the way down. I'm getting that really nice arc. Now when I turn it around, I'm going to put it on point M. Be really careful on point M. You're always putting your pointer on a point. So I'm going to put my finger down to hold it in place. Again, with my outside hole, swinging up, swinging down, and then I go back with the ruler and hit it with the line. All right, so many song references I could make here, but I got to keep that on the inside. So moving right along, same thing I'm going to do on line segment MB. All right, I know that AM was the same length as MB, so I can just use the same outside hole, meaning like I don't have to move the slider at all for line segment MB because they're equal. So I'm going to put again my pointer on M, line it up nicely in the middle, hold it. And then again, I can see I'm about 3/4 of the way. I'm not at B. I'm not halfway. I'm like 3/4 of the way. So with my outside hole, I swing all the way up and down, turn it around, put my pointer on B, make sure it's lined up nice and straight in the middle. And then again, I swing up and down to make sure those arcs are crossing. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw in that line as well. And now I can always go back and make sure that I solve the question correctly. Do I have 4 equal segments, 4 congruent segments? Well, I'm going to highlight them all. I have this segment right here, so that's 1. Then I have 2. then I have 3, and now I have 4. So it looks like I did solve it correctly. I have 4 equal segments, 4 congruent pieces. And again, that's how you would do it. I don't know if anyone knows what construction I'm using here, because that's probably the most important part. For those of us at home watching this video, you are 100% correct. It is a bisecting construction. So I got to get that football-looking construction, and that's what cuts my segments in half. All right, let's go on to the next page. So looking here at the top, it says now we want to construct perpendicular lines from a point that's on the line. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. I want to make perpendicular lines from a point that's on the line, all right? I know that perpendicular lines make 90 degrees, so I'm just gonna add that to this diagram here. I'm gonna throw on a little box because I know that box represents 90, all right? So I know that if the right-hand side is 90, the left-hand side has to also be 90, right? Because they're adjacent, they're next to each other, which means they add up to 180. I'm only gonna fill it in on one side, so doesn't matter, you can make 1, you can make 2, total. All right, so here it says we're gonna need a compass and a straight edge to construct our perpendicular lines from point P on the line. All right, so if we look down below, the very first step is you taking your pointer, and I'm gonna put it on point P. I wanna make sure it's lined up nicely right in the middle. I'm gonna take my slider here, I'm gonna drop it low. So I wanna make sure that it's dropped enough that when I swing it, I'm hitting the line on the left. And again, I just got to turn my paper here. Again, I want to swing it so I make sure that I'm hitting the line on the right-hand side as well, on both sides. All right? So now that I've made this arc, I have a point that I've just created on the left and a point that I've just created on the right. So again, I started at P, I dropped it low, and now I'm going to slide to the left. I'm going to line it up right in the middle again. And instead of using the inside hole, now I'm going to use the outside hole because I'm going to make 2 arcs down here and I want to make sure that they cross. And I think that this might be too short. So you're always going to probably use that outside hole. That's your best bet. So here I go. I'm going to swing and make an arc at the bottom. Then I'm going to slide to the right. I'm going to line it up nice and right in the middle. And then I'm going to make another arc here. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to line up point P with where my arc is crossing with my ruler and draw in that straight line. And then I'm going to go ahead, last step, and I'm just going to add in that 90-degree box because that was the construction. I'm making perpendicular lines. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing for number 2. I'm going to have to turn my paper for this one because the line is slanted, and that's okay. Turn your paper at home if that's what you need to do. So again, I'm going to take my pointer, I'm going to line it up with point P, so it's right in the middle, and I'm going to drop it low. I'm going to move my slider far enough down so that when I swing it, I get these 2 points that I'm now creating on either side of the line. So I'm going to go ahead and put a point on the left and a point on the right. And again, now I'm going to slide to the left. I want to make sure it's lined up nicely in the middle there. And again, I'm not going to use the inside hole. I'm using my outside hole, people. So I'm going to make a little arc on the left. I'm going to slide to the right. Again, I'm going to make another arc here so that way they cross. And then I'm going to grab my ruler and I'm going to connect point P where it crosses the arcs down below. And then one more time, I know that these are perpendicular lines. They form 90, so I'm going to add that box on. All right, and then again, these are perpendicular lines. Lines go on forever, so I can add arrows to the top and the bottom on number 2. Same thing, arrows on the top and the bottom on number 1 as well. All right, I want you to try numbers 3 and 4 on your own now, and then check back in a minute. All right, here's numbers 3 and 4 completed. So again, I should have taken my pointer. I should have lined it up nicely with point P in the middle. I should have dropped my slider low, swung it all the way to the right, swung it all the way to the left because I want to make these 2 arcs that are going to cross line L. And then I'm going to slide to the left, make an arc, and then I'm going to slide to the right, make another arc so that way they cross. And then I'm going to draw in my line at the end, all right? Crisscross, keep that in mind. And then the same thing for number 4. Okay, so now let's take a second and look at the next section. So this is very similar to what we were just working on, except earlier we were constructing a perpendicular line from a point that was on the line. Now we're making perpendicular lines from a point that's not on the line. Let's go ahead and just highlight that off. Construct a perpendicular line from a point A that's not. It's not going to be on that line. So it's really the exact same steps. I'm going to take my pointer. I'm going to put it on point P. It's okay that it's not on the line. I'm going to line it up so it's nice and center. I'm going to put my finger to hold my compass in place. And then again, I want to move my slider down so that way one of these holes, whether it's the inside hole or the outside hole, is below line L. So again, when I stick my pen in and I'm swinging, it's going to cross line L. All right, so I'm going to maybe just keep it right here. I'm going to swing to the right, swing to the left. Now I move it away. I have these 2 points just like we did before. And then it's the exact same steps. I'm going to slide to the left. Same thing, only now you can see that my outside hole is actually off the paper, and that's okay. I'll just use the inside hole for this one because it's a different construction, so I can use that same hole again instead of changing it out. Whatever's gonna work for you guys. So I'm gonna make a little arc, then I'm gonna slide to the right, then I'm gonna make another arc here. Crisscross, everybody drop your line. So now I'm gonna draw a line that connects point P to where my arcs are crossing. All right, and then again, the entire construction was to make perpendicular lines. So I'm just gonna add in that 90-degree angle box just to show that I do have a right angle being formed there. And then again, it's perpendicular lines. Lines go on forever. So I'm just gonna add arrows to the top and the bottom. All right, let's practice again. Now let's try number 2 together. So as I look at number 2, it's gonna be the same steps. This line is a little turned, so I'm gonna, again, just turn my paper a tiny bit to make this problem easier for myself. So I'm gonna put the pointer on point P. I'm gonna make sure my slider is below line L, so when I'm swinging, it crosses the line, okay? You could drop it further down. I just like to be close to the line. So I'm gonna swing to the right, swing to the left. I'm on the line. I'm gonna add on my points, and then I'm gonna slide to the left, make an arc, and then I'm gonna slide to the right, make another arc, crisscross, everybody drop your line. Okay, so now I'm gonna connect point P to where my arcs are crossing, and then again, I get that right angle that shows that my lines are perpendicular. Lines go on forever, so I'm gonna add arrows to the top and the bottom. All right. It's your turn. I'm going to need you to try these questions on the next page, numbers 3, 4, 5, and 6. So please pause the video. Check back in a minute. All right, so here are the answers to 3, 4, 5, and 6. Number 3 might have been a little tricky. I know that the arcs could have easily went off the paper. It depends on how low you were going to drop your slider originally. So just be careful. If it was going off the paper, then again, you just know that you dropped your slider a little too far down and you just have to move it back up. Same thing with number 4. As I'm looking at number 4, when I dropped my slider, you can see it was just like a little bit below the line, but when I swung, my arc wasn't crossing the line. So what did I do? I didn't freak out. I just grabbed my ruler and I just extended this line because lines go on forever and that's okay. Now I have 2 points that are clearly on the line, and then again, I just finished off the construction from there. And again, here's numbers 5 and 6. They should really all be looking the same. All right, moving on. All right, just a little bit left to go. So as we look here, this is going to be a new vocabulary word that we're going to go over. It's called altitude. So let's go ahead and just highlight that on our notes. All right, an altitude of a triangle is a segment. Let me highlight this. It's a segment from any vertex, okay? And it's going to be perpendicular. It's going to be perpendicular to the opposite side. All right, we're going to see an example of that right now. So as we look at example 1, it says construct an altitude. Again, as you're reading these problems independently, you need to look for those vocab words. And my altitude is going to be from vertex A, and it's moving to side CB. That's really important. So right away, I'm going to take my pen, and I'm just going to put a little point on vertex A, because that's where my altitude is dropping from. It's from A to side CB, and side CB is right here down below. So I'm really doing the exact same construction we've been working on this whole time. Because if I want perpendicular lines, I know that I'm gonna take my compass, I'm gonna make sure that my pointer is lined up nicely so that A is in the center, and then I know that I drop my slider so it's just right below the line segment that they gave me. So I'm making sure that I'm using maybe my inside hole here. So I'm right below line CB. And then I'm gonna do what we did before. I'm just gonna swing left and right. You can clearly see that I'm hitting the segment on the right, so I can mark that as a point. And it's like just a tiny bit off the line on the left. So again, I'm not gonna freak out. I'm just gonna grab my ruler and I'm just gonna extend this line segment. That's okay, you can absolutely do that. Let me go back. Now I clearly have a point on the left as well. And then just like before, we're gonna sing our little song. I'm gonna slide to the left. I'm gonna make sure that my slider is far enough down so when I create these arcs, they're gonna cross. I hope they do. And then I'm gonna slide to the right. Same thing, I wanna line up my pointer with that new point that I just created nicely so it's centered. And then from point A, I want to drop a line down so it's hitting the arcs that I just created. And then again, the entire construction was to construct an altitude. And if we look back, an altitude is a segment. So here's my segment right here inside the triangle. It's okay that you go to the arcs, totally fine. It's a segment from any vertex. It was from vertex A, and it's going to be perpendicular to the opposite side. So this line segment is perpendicular to CB. Well, what do perpendicular lines form? Right angles. So I'm going to just finish it off by adding that on. All right. Example 2 is very similar. All right, and this is what you should have got for example 2. Now I know this one was a little tricky because when you put your pointer on C and you drop your slider, there was no line here for you to cross. So your very first step would have been extending line segment BA all the way out. So that way when I do drop my slider down and I swing, now I have a line segment to cross. All right, and then it was the exact same steps after. This one is outside the triangle because it's an obtuse triangle, outside obtuse. All right, earlier, this was an acute triangle, so this was inside. All right, so just be very careful of that. All right, and last but not least, final question. So this is asking us to construct parallel lines. I'm gonna just go ahead and highlight that because this one isn't really complicated, but it's definitely a few steps. So if you want to construct parallel lines, I just want you to add at the top of your paper, you're really making 2 perpendicular lines. All right. So here when it says construct a line that's going to be passing through point A, but I want that line to be parallel to line L. All right. This is what the directions are always typically going to look like. They'll give you a point and you want to have a line that's going to be parallel to L. Well, before I can find that parallel line, the first thing I'm going to do is find a perpendicular line. So we already know how to find perpendicular lines. I take my compass, I put my pointer so it's lined up with A. A is in the middle. I make sure that my slider is just below line L, and then I'm gonna swing. So I get those 2 marks on the left and on the right. And then I'm gonna slide to the left. I'm gonna swing to get my first arc. Then I'm gonna slide to the right, swing again so I get my second arc. And then I'm gonna go ahead and connect point A to where my arcs are intersecting. That's gonna be your first step. So now I have perpendicular lines, but I know the question asks for parallel lines. So now I'm gonna just turn my paper. You boys and girls at home, you're gonna turn your paper as well. And now we're gonna just make a second perpendicular line, again from point A. So I'm gonna put my pointer on A, lined up nicely in the middle. Again, I'm gonna take my slider. I wanna move it far enough down so that way when I'm swinging, I'm hitting that line that I've just created. And then again, I'm creating these 2 points using that arc. And then one more time, we're gonna slide to the left, create an arc. We're gonna slide to the right, create another arc, crisscross, and then we're gonna drop our line. And now when I turn my paper back, I can clearly see that I have 2 parallel lines. We know that parallel lines are marked with an arrow, so I'm just gonna put one up top and one down below just to show that these 2 lines are parallel, the top and the bottom. All right, cool. Just make sure that you guys are getting the homework done. And this lesson was 6 pages long, so when you're submitting on Canvas, make sure we have all 6 pages.